Hello everybody, and welcome to the second part of our PyGame with Python 3 game development tutorial video. In the last video, what we covered was just creating a very basic window, understanding the bare minimum of PyGame, how it's initialized, how it's ended, as well as events and stuff like that. So the first thing I'd like us to do is let's just get rid of this print event statement. We don't need that anymore. That was just going to clog up our console. And now we want to add a few other things. Generally, at the top of everyone's script, you're going to see a lot of the very same stuff. Okay, so first of all, we're going to want to change how we're displaying the game's size. So I want to do this for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is if we want to resize the game or offer an option later on to say, hey, we want a different resolution of the game, then we can do that. Also, the more major reason is a lot of times you're going to reference the game's size, either width or height, to create events or to display things. So to display text, for example, you want to say where you want that text to be. Well, if the window is 800 wide by 600 tall, great. We're probably going to display some text either at the top left, which would be 0, 0. But what if we want to display text in the middle? Well, we need to know those dimensions, so we need to be able to reference those dimensions. So this is just kind of bad practice to do it this way. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to make some variables instead. So we'll say display underscore width equals 800. And then we're going to say display underscore height equals 600. And then we'll take this, copy, paste, and then copy, paste. So now just to set mode, display width, display height. So now not only can we edit these later on, we can reference them later on, and we can modify them later on, and everybody's happy. So, that's the first thing we want to do. Now, another thing that you're going to see, or probably more often than you're going to see than this, a lot of people really will just hard code it right into there, but it's just not really the best idea. What you're going to see in most people's code is color definitions right at the top. I kind of wish PyGame had some color definitions by default, like black, like red, white, or red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, black, and white would make a whole lot of sense, but they don't. And I guess that was okay. But generally, you're going to see everybody is defining at least black and white right out of the gate. And the way that you're going to define colors is with the RGB method, I guess. And so it's going to be black equals a certain tuple, and then white equals a certain tuple. Now, just in case you guys aren't familiar, first of all, colors in computing are measured with RGB. And the idea here, and the why, because RGB stands for red, green, blue. So when you define a color like black, it's going to be 0, 0, 0, because it's going to be, there's literally like no black, or no color in black, which is quite opposite of what you know of black. Today, like black is like the absence, like if you were to mesh every color like with paint or something, and you were painting and you meshed all of the colors, you'd wind up with something pretty black. Whereas here, the black is like the absence of all color. Whereas and then white is all colors here, which I suppose is sort of the way of white is today. Even like white is supposed to contain all colors. Anyway, let's not get on that tangent, and let's just define why we use RGB instead of like red, yellow, blue. So the primary colors that you're probably taught in school were red, yellow, blue, because red plus yellow makes orange, and yellow and blue makes green, and so on. And obviously red is red. Well, the way that works is if you take a paintbrush and you paint some red, and then you paint some yellow, the yellow kind of brightens the red a little bit, and it adds that kind of tinge of yellow, so it makes it orange. But that's with, like, it's basically as you add more, you're taking away light, whereas when you take, with computers, we use RGB, because the idea is with computers we have, at least in the old days, what you had like a backlight, and it would use light to display colors. So if you had two flashlights and you put like saran wrap over them, one was like green saran wrap and the other one was blue saran wrap or something, and you turn them both on, you turn the blue on, it would be very blue, and you turn the green on, it would be very green. And if you cross them over, you would see at the crossover point, it didn't get darker like it would if you painted paint. It got lighter, right? Because you added more light to it. So that's why we use a little bit of a different system in computers. Nowadays, it's all like generated digitally pretty much, but that's why we use RGB with computers. So that means what's white going to be? Well, white is going to be the maximum of all colors. Each of these colors that we can put in here is anything. You have 256 choices for each color. So the combinations are 256 by 256 by 256, right? So anyway, white is going to be 255, 255, 255. And why is that? Because one of your options is, of course, 0. So white's 255, 255, 255. But you could also have red, for example. Red would be, we said this is RGB, right? So R is for red. So red would be 255, 0, 0. Easy enough. Green would be 0, 255, 0, and so on. One of the things I like to do is, and we'll show later on, is I just go to like a website and you can like pick a color out of like a nice like color wheel basically, and it'll give you the RGB. I find that's the easiest way to make fancy colors, but you can certainly make black, white, red, green, blue really easily. You don't really have to memorize anything besides RGB. Anyway, moving on, we'll be fine with black and white for now. We will eventually move away from black and white, but for now, black and white is fine. So that's RGB. Now, we need some sort of like game character, and we could, PyGame has a thing built in where you can draw shapes and stuff, and you can draw things. We will use that, but at least for our main little character, which will be for us a car, or at least for me a car, you can do whatever you want. You can make a boat for all I care. We're going to actually draw that. So I'm going to show you guys how we can actually draw something, and then we can use that in PyGame. So I'll show you guys both how to load up an image into PyGame and use that image dynamically. And then we'll also show you guys how you can draw things in PyGame and manipulate what you've drawn as well. So we'll show both of those things. So now what I want to do, either you could go online and just get a picture of like a race car or something that you find interesting, or you can draw one. I think it's more fun to draw one personally, so I drew mine in Paint. I'll just show a real sped up version of me drawing it in Paint. And then also I want to cover for my Windows users how we can make a transparent background, because for us our background will be white, but if our car crosses over anything, that white edges of the car is going to cross over. You might also want to change backgrounds or whatever. It's always good if you're making games that whatever images you load, you make a transparent background, not a white background. It's cheesy. So we're going to do that as well. So anyway, I'll show me drawing my little car if you want some inspiration. Otherwise, you can draw your own car. I'll also just upload my car image for anybody who wants to use my car image, but it's more fun to draw your own, so I encourage you to draw your own. But I will upload mine. And then finally, I think it is a big important thing. If you're making games and you want to load images, you should know how to make transparent backgrounds. If you're on like Mac or something like that, it's actually really easy to do. But if you're on Windows, it's not so much. So for Windows, I recommend a program called GIMP. You've probably heard of it. I don't like it very much, but to make a transparent background on GIMP, it's super easy. So anyway, I'll show me drawing the car, and then I'll come back and show you guys how you can edit an image real quick for no background on GIMP. So let's do that. Okay, once you have your image, I want to show you guys how to make a transparent background with GIMP. GIMP, you have to download and install GIMP, but once you do, I'm trying to find GIMP anyway. Let's see if I can. Okay, finally found GIMP. There. Hopefully this will open up GIMP for us. Maybe not. There it is. Okay, so we got GIMP up. Man, just don't like GIMP. So when you get GIMP up, you get like all these little windows. Part of why I hate GIMP. But what we can do is we can go File, Open, and we can open up one of our images. I'm trying to find, let's see, an image that... Okay, I think, yeah, so we'll use my old race car image. So here's the image, whatever you have. So this is our awesome race car. But as you can see, the background is white. And with GIMP, it's super easy. You just go, I think it's colors, and then color to alpha. Hit that. By default, they just say, hey, from white, basically you could click this and you could pick any color. But for us, we want to convert white to alpha. And so that's all we're going to do. It's by default there. You hit OK, boom. You have converted the image to alpha. Now you'll go File, Export As, and you can save, the new image as whatever you want. So that's just a quick example of how you can add a transparent background. Like I said, don't really mean to do any image editing. You can tell I'm not much of an image editor or graphics guy, but it's definitely fun to have transparent backgrounds, and I found out how easy it was to do it in Windows with GIMP. So boom, transparent background. Now, once you have your car image, what you're going to want to do is somewhere around here, we'll make some space, scroll up a little bit, and now we're just going to say car img, and that's going to equal pygame.image.load, and then what do we want to load? And this is, for me, it's racecar.png. Make sure that the image is in the same directory as your script, otherwise it's not going to work. But you could put the full path, C:/ blah, 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 blah. But if it's in the same directory, this should be fine. Unless you're on like Linux or something, sometimes that gets angry. But anyway, that is our image. So to load up an image, we just do that. But obviously, that image is not shown yet. So just so you know, that's just loaded into the background, basically. So we load that. And now we actually want to display that. So to display our car, we're just going to make a real simple function that displays the car. And to display it, we have to say where we want to display it. So again, it's necessary to be able to reference width and height. Here's the first reason. So we can say where on here we can make it somewhat dynamic. For us, we don't really necessarily have to make it too dynamic, but we can. So crash equals false. We're going to leave that near our while loop there. But now we're going to define some of our functions. And our first function is going to be define car. And car is going to have only two parameters. It'll be x and y. Colon. And now for car, we're going to say game display. So we're referencing this variable up here, which is just the PyGame display.setMode. Game display dot blit. And what blit is going to do is it's basically like drawing to your little background stuff, whatever we're asking for. Since it's an image, we blit it to a surface. And so we go dot blit, and we blit car image. So we're blitting what? The car image. And then where are we going to blit it? And again, we need a tuple here because this is a single parameter. So where do we blit it? X, X, Y. So whatever X and Y we put in here, that's where we're going to blit the car image, which just so happens to be this variable, which happens to be our car picture. So that's what our car function is going to do for displaying the car. Now again, I just want to reiterate, XY has to be a tuple in its own little brackets, and here's a reason. Car image is a parameter. So if we just did this, it would think X and Y were separate parameters, when really it's all one parameter. So we definitely want to have those brackets there, don't forget. Now, to start our car's location, we could just hard code it. We could say, well, we want it to be at the bottom, in the middle. We could do that. And now it would also be a good idea to explain location of things with computers. Again, not the same as what you were taught in school. So in school, when you have like a graph, let's say you've got your graph like this and you've got your axes. I don't really know where y'all are. Yeah, so mine's opposite. But you have an axis, and then as you go up the axes, X increases and Y increases, right? And if you go into the negatives, X is basically going down, and all that, or well, X doesn't matter, it depends which way you're moving, but Y is going down, for example. So things are measured in general, as you were taught. The bottom left is 0, 0. Well, in computers, that's the opposite. So up here is where X and Y begin, is like right here. So 0, 0 for computers is actually up in the up left. As you add to X, you move over to the right. So that's, you know, the same. But as you add to Y, you actually move down. So just keep that in mind, because that'll trip you up sometimes. So keep that in mind. And with that, where do we want this car to start? Well, we want the car to start X equals, and we're going to say we want the car to start at whatever display width is times, well, we kind of want it in the middle, but if we put it smack in the middle, again, it's going to reference the car on by the top left, or basically. So the top left, so if you say that's out of the half, then really if the image was big enough, it would be like way over a little bit more. It wouldn't be centered. So for now, we'll just say 0.45. And then Y equals display height, height times 0.8. Again, if you say Y equals display height, we reference the image by the upper left, so that's where Y is the top. So if you said Y equals display height, the image would be off the screen. It would be like 1 pixel off the screen. So we don't really want that, or really I suppose it might be 1 pixel on the screen, but you wouldn't notice it. So we do that. So XY. Now we have crash equals false, great. While not crashed, we run the loop, and then whenever this loop, basically this loop here is like our logic loop of events. So we have an event handling loop, and then I misspoke. So this is just our event handling loop, right? So for event in that. So we put all of the inputs and events and stuff like that that we do to the game in this loop, and we don't yet have a logic loop, but you'll see in a little bit how, well, it's not necessarily a logic loop, but it's a group of logic, and for us it'll be a bunch of if statements basically. But anyway, we don't have any logic to our game yet, we just have event handling, but we'll get there. So anyway, to show our car, we would do, for example, car X, Y, and that's it, because X, Y is defined up here as the starting point, and then if we wanted to move our car, we could modify X, Y somewhere in this while loop, and we would move the car. And then the only other thing that's necessary is, right now our background is, well, there is no background. We kind of want to change the background color, so we're going to change the background. We're going to say surface, or game display dot fill, and then in here we can specify what we want to fill the game display with, and we want to fill it with white. So anything that was there before just got like written over basically with the color of white, and then we draw the car. If you did it in the reverse, it's really important that you put this first before we draw the car, because if you did it this way, if you did car and then game display dot fill white, what would happen is it would draw the car, and then it would just basically paint a bunch of white over the car, and you wouldn't see the car, right? So that's not what we want. So for example, we could run it, and we just get this white window, a bit racy. There's nothing on here, but the car's there. It's just been painted over basically. So you take the car and you put it under like that, and so the car drawing happens second, and now we have a car on our screen. So again, it's just really important that you take the order of things that you draw into consideration, because it literally will draw them in that order, and then it shows it. So keep that in mind. So close out of this, and yes. And then, after you're done doing all of the drawing that you want to do, update, and that will show it to the screen. You can also do .flip. So I'll just show that just for kicks. Should be the same thing, right? So it's just the same thing. I like update. You can do flip. You can do whatever you want. Flip's just kind of a good idea to think of, because like flip is kind of closely related to what's it reminds me of like a flip book. You know, that's kind of what games are anyways, because all the game is update is, you know, it gives you the notion of movement, but nothing actually moves. It's just redrawing of frames, moving things just slightly in the background. You just change the position of things slightly in each little thing, like a flipbook would, and a flipbook gives you the impression that something is moving, but nothing's actually moving. It's just frames being refreshed. So anyway, so flip kind of is a good one just to think of, because that's how you kind of visualize movement in games, is like a flipbook. Anyway, this seems like a good place to stop. We've got our image. We drew our little main character, whatever it is, our race car. did the transparent background. We showed how we can load that image up, and now we're ready to start doing a few more interesting things. So anyways, stay tuned to the next video. If you guys have any questions or comments on this video, feel free to leave them below. I'll be happy to help. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for all the support and the subscriptions, and until next time.